we smoke, make physicians have to write a note. I was broke, I'm just thankful.
Hello everybody, my name is Kiana. I am a registered nurse. I have been working in the emergency department for 6 years. I will be transitioning into education. I recently got my master's. So I would like to discuss what it's like being an emergency room nurse. So in my clinical rotation for my master's in nursing education, I taught at a nursing school and with the senior students, and they were so fascinated by me being an emergency room nurse. They would bombard me with questions from left to right, like, how is it? What is it like? What do I need to know? Like, I don't think I'm ready. And in this video, I am going to give you just that. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, check out my book. So, how did I become an emergency room nurse? So, I became an emergency room nurse by chance, actually. I used to be in the military. Like I said, if you want a military video, leave it in the comments and I will do my best to get you guys one. But I was in the military and I worked as a med tech. And so a med tech would translate to a civilian LVN. And so as a civilian LVN med tech in the military, I worked in the NICU. And I was like, oh, I love this. We get to watch these little babies, premature babies grow into little people, and then they go home with their moms and dads. And so I was 100% sure I wanted to be a NICU nurse. Well, fast forward, went through nursing school, graduated, and began applying at NICU departments. And each one of them that responded pretty much said the same thing, like, oh, you need critical care experience before you come into the NICU. Pause. This is just my take on it. I feel like after nursing school, whichever direction you're gonna go that way. And in that, I mean, if you wanna work with children, go ahead and go to the NICU, try to get in the NICU, peds, maternity, and things like that. And if you're gonna work with adults, go adults. Because I think it's so hard to learn the reverse. Like, now that I've been an emergency room nurse for 6 years, like, when I see a baby, I'm like, ah! But when I was a medic, like, it was easy. I'm like, oh, they were teaching us how to do scalp IVs and we were getting blood from the heels. So, those are things that I used to do. But now that I've went the other direction, it just kind of, it doesn't freak me out, but it's just like I am very, 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 very cautious around babies. And when I see them in one of my rooms, I freak out privately, but I do what I have, to make sure that they get the proper care. So when they told me I needed critical care experience, I looked at my options. It was ICU or ER. And so I love my ICU people. Thank you guys for all that you do. We could not function without you guys because we sometimes get severely sick patients and we need you to take care of them. So thank you. Please be nice to us. This is nothing against the ICU, but when I did my rotation through the ICU, I was very afraid. Like, I saw all these channels, I saw all these bags, I saw all these machines. I didn't even know what they were. I was like, oh, what is going on in here? And then once my patient that I was working with my preceptor on finally was like settled, it was like a watch game. Like, we would watch and then we would go in and like titrate a drip and then check the pressure and then write down the hemodynamics, and then we would have to it was just a lot. I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this. Like, it's just too much for me, and that's just me. And so then when I went through my emergency room rotation, it was very skill based. I found myself using like all my skills. I was starting IVs, I was doing splints, I was just, I was just very active and involved, and like we were constantly getting new patients. And so the choice for me was easy. To get the critical care experience, I went to the emergency department. And so I was just thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna get my year of critical care experience, then I'm gonna apply for the NICU. And it just so happened that I actually worked in one of the, let me not say the worst, but let me say an emergency room that needed a lot of improvement. I have been trying to channel my energy into positive things, and I don't want to speak any negativity into the earth. And so with that being said, I worked in an emergency room that needed a lot of improvement. And meeting my preceptor, I think it was like my first day, told me like, either you're gonna sink or you're gonna swim. And I remember feeling like, what? Who says that? You know, just as a baby nurse, my feelings were so hurt. I'm like, why would he say that? Does he not want to be my preceptor? Well, it wasn't that he didn't want to be my preceptor, but he was being pretty honest. Things were happening so fast in the emergency department, and I was just trying to get a grip. Like, I was just trying to stay in control of the situation and make sure that I was, you know, doing all of the proper safety mechanisms and that I was carrying out the right interventions. And, you know, so I literally was on a boat and it was sinking, but fortunate for me, I learned to swim. And the way that I learned to swim is pretty much the way that all ERs are designed to function. And that is with effective communication, confidence in your skills, and team-based nursing. And so those three elements are very important, especially in the emergency room. They cannot function without it. Like, if you cannot let a doctor know, like, you have to be able to vocalize your concerns about a patient's status, especially if it's declining. For instance, I can give you a prime example. When I was in the emergency room, I had gave this lady, her blood pressure was like 196 over, I don't know, 100. And so we had just given her like 1 amlodipine, and it was probably like 5 milligrams. And her blood pressure was improving. It was like 139 over 75. But I had noticed that she had began to like have like slurred speech. And I was just kind of like, I don't think this is right. I was like, I don't want to call a stroke alert. You know, I was still relatively new, like new enough to like kind of be on my own, but I wasn't sure, like, do I just pick up the phone and call a stroke alert? And so I ran to the doctor. I'm like, sir, I think that my patient in bed, whatever, is having a stroke. I gave her blood pressure was this, I gave her this, and now she's slurred speech, her face is drooping. And he went over, he assessed her, he was like, good call. And she ended up getting TPA. So with that, if you don't have, confidence to speak up, I don't think that the emergency room is a good fit for you, because oftentimes it could feel like you are on your own in the ED, but everybody value and respects each of the team members' opinion. So your other nurses, the doctors, everybody respects it because they understand that while the ED is a controlled environment, it's very unpredictable. Just something simple as trying to get somebody's blood pressure within normal limits leads to TPA. And so that just shows you like the spectrum of how you can go from 0 to 100 real quick. So I'm sorry I had to do that. It was just like the opportunity. But that is something to consider. And then also effective communication, effective. And so that is a prime example of effective communication. I keep saying confidence, but the confidence level comes in your skills, because the doctors really trust you in the ED. They trust that you know what you're supposed to do, not necessarily saying like, oh, I'm gonna put in an order for meds or, things like that, but you can almost, once you get into the rhythm of the ED, you get used to certain disease process and you can almost already know what to expect. Like, if you suspect that a patient has a dislocated shoulder that's going to require surgery, while on most like extremity injuries we don't get labs, but if it has a potential for surgery, then of course you want to just get a CBC, a BMP, just to, have that ready, so that when the doctor does put in the order, like, okay, we're gonna need some baseline labs because this patient is gonna need a CT scan, and before they do a CT scan, they have to know the function level of the kidneys. So those are just some things to be cognizant of. Also, if the doctor's not available, what are you gonna do to maintain a stable patient until the doctor can come? So those are things that you just have to really, really know. And it comes with experience and practice. And never be afraid to ask questions or say, I need help, or I do not know how to do this, which leads me into team-based nursing. So team-based nursing is not only the role of your other teammates, but your role as an ED nurse. We get a variation of patients throughout the day. And so sometimes it's minor things, but sometimes it's major situations and code situations. And so in those code situations, most of the time, if there's not multiple codes going on, you'll have team members there responding to your code to help you. And as the primary nurse, your role is to let them know what you need them to do. And you can't be like trying to do everything on your own. Like if they're there, use them, because they're there to help you. And that was something that I struggled with in the beginning of my nursing career, because I always had to be like hands-on. Like I wanted to get the blood, I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that. And then I realized like they are here to help me. Let me let them do that while I document everything that's going on. And when I'm done documenting, then I can jump in and help wherever, or get whatever I need that wasn't complete yet. And so in that, it also goes beyond that. So like if sometimes we may have minor patients and our counterpart may have critically ill patients, ask them where you can help them, because we are only as strong as our weakest link. And not meaning like weak, like their competency level, but meaning like if it shouldn't be anyone sitting around in the emergency room and one person doing all the work. We are all a team and we all function together. And when everybody's work is done, then we can take a break. And so the nurse to patient ratio in the ED is 4-to-1. Yes, 4-to-1. But like I said, it's not that bad, because essentially there's a variation of patients. You can get minor and some with a higher acuity, or you can get all acuity. Unfortunately, that is the reality. But the charge nurse usually tries to divide it up so that it's fairly divided, but we can't control the circumstances of the ED. Like I said earlier, it's so unpredictable. It's hard to know what's gonna come in. I mean, just last week, we had like a stroke, we had a COVID and respiratory failure, and a code blue all going on at the same time. So you just have to be prepared to do the best that you can and really truly dig deep down into those nursing school skills and bring them out and try to keep your patient alive. And that's the other thing. Patients do die in the emergency department. So if you don't do well with death before coming to the emergency room, I highly recommend like trying to find positive coping mechanisms, because some people take these things a lot harder than others. And I'm not saying people die every day. When they do die, you have to be able to stand before the family and be there to comfort them through the remaining process, which is getting them to a funeral home, or if there's going to be a medical examiner case, then getting them prepared to go to ME. And so here is what it's like a day in the ED. So I won't be able to record out on the floor, but I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of insight of how it works when you're working in the emergency department. These are some things to expect. Like I said, one of the good qualities of a properly functioning emergency department is having all the supplies that you need, meaning you need to stock whenever there's a moment of free time, because working in the ED is totally unpredictable. So I'm gonna get to stocking before I get started, and I'll see you guys later. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do when you come on shift is make sure that everything is stocked. So this is going to be our IV and blood draw cart. So we have tubes, we have some piggybacks, syringes, IV start kits, and then we also have our angio catheters, needles, IVs, whatever you want to call them. And then everything in the supply closet is broken down into sections. So you have IV supply, patient care, urology, critical care, pediatric, and wound care. So, okay, as you've seen in my first video, my side was pretty stocked, so I went to the other side because I'm like, they have to be drawing from somewhere. So as you can see, this is less stocked, and so I'm gonna stock this one up. Don't just do it for yourself, do it for the entire unit. We function as a team. Okay, so this is, I'm in the supply closet, looking for something, but usually how it works in the emergency room, you come on shift, you get report from the offgoing nurse, you go check on all of your patients, make sure that they're alive. That's not a joke.
I'm just thankful that I found some hope.